Altair Inspire is the groundbreaking tool that's made structural analysis, lightweighting optimization, motion, and even fluid analysis simple, intuitive, and very, very accurate for anybody who wants to get into it. But what if I were to tell you that there were a setting in Inspire that could take your structural analysis and reduce its analysis time down to mere seconds? For instance, this CubeSat, which when I ran in the traditional OptiStruct analysis, took about 2.5 minutes. After setting this to the SimSolid solver, it was able to solve in a mere 11 seconds, a 92% reduction in analysis time. This setting can be found in the File, Preferences, Run Options, and simply changing this analysis solver to SimSolid can make certain types of analyses drastically quicker. So I guess to start things off, we probably should address what exactly SimSolid is and what sets it apart from a traditional finite element analysis. SimSolid is a revolutionary new technology, relatively new technology, that allows you to perform analyses geometry-based as opposed to element-based. And because of that, it's going to allow certain types of geometry to be solved substantially faster. So why would you choose SimSolid over OptiStruct? Well, that depends heavily on the type of geometry that you have. So let's take this CubeSat, for instance. A couple of features on here that we need to note. First of all, it's thin, very thin compared to its overall size. When we do a traditional finite element analysis, many elements have to be created to capture the behavior of any thickness. In fact, typically we do about 3 elements per thickness. That's going to reduce our element size drastically and result in hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of elements. Another aspect to this geometry are very small features. These small radii, uh, the small little features in here, and even the stamping into this, the name, the marking that's been put into this. All of those features can lead to an incredibly large number of elements and thus a potentially long analysis time. So if your part is thin solid, if it has small features on it, or if it has imprinting, names, embossing, things like that, SimSolid can drastically reduce your analysis time. So running an analysis on this CubeSat part here, when I ran it using the OptiStruct solver, it took about 2 minutes, 15 seconds, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. And if you've ever watched any of my other videos, you typically will say, okay, I'll start the analysis and then we'll come back to it when it's done. But in case you don't believe me, why don't we take a look at that right now? So you can see up here it's set for SimSolid. I can verify that by coming to Preferences and make sure that SimSolid is activated. I'm going to leave all of this other settings just on their own. I'm not going to touch them. And we'll do this live. So I'll come here, I'll click Analyze for stiffness, which is faster, and I'll click Run. You'll see the indicator, and I couldn't even get the sentence out. Before I could even get the sentence out, it's done. That's how quick SimSolid analysis is. Now let's take a look at the results. So these are the results using the SimSolid solver. We can take a look at the distribution of stress on the part. See, it's focused in the areas that we would expect it to. But now let's compare it to the OptiStruct results. And if I come here to the OptiStruct results, you can see they're just about exactly the same. Some more fidelity in these areas here, but we can see that the highlights, the high stress areas, are all being indicated in the exact same location that SimSolid predicted them, telling me that SimSolid and OptiStruct are giving me virtually the same results. You'll typically see a bit of a differential between them, But in reality, finite element analysis or analysis, structural analysis as a whole, is always an approximation. There's always going to be a little bit of difference between solvers, between runs, between setups. But this is the difference in these results, the actual values are well within the accepted criteria of validating a structural analysis against real world results. So we had mentioned running an analysis on thin solid parts, on parts with small features, and parts with embossing, lettering, features built into them like the CubeSat logo here. But another instance or another situation where you're going to want to use SimSolid is in a situation where you have potentially poor geometry, overlapping geometry, penetrating geometry. So let's take a look at another model file, a frame for a Formula SAE vehicle. So this is a frame for a typical Formula SAE vehicle, or it could be Baja or Solar Car or any student competition vehicle that are typically made up of a tubular frame in a truss type structure. The first and foremost, one of the things that would lead me towards using SimSolid is they are uh, thin tubes, thin solid tubes, or thin hollow tubes. But the other instance, or the other case here is, that you'll see here that this is not necessarily a perfect geometry. We've got some penetrations, we've got some gaps. And in the case of OptiStruct, if I were to try to run this in OptiStruct, first of all, if it ran, it could potentially take a very, very long time to run it because of all these small features in the thin solid. But in the case of this model, it actually won't even run an OptiStruct. And that's not an issue of OptiStructs. That's an issue of the geometry. When you've got elements penetrating other elements, solvers can't deal with that. It can't handle it. It can't build the connections between all of the myriad of different tubes here. And so it would require a fair amount of time on my part to clean this geometry up to make sure it's suitable for a finite element analysis. But with SimSolid's geometry-based capabilities, not a problem. I can come here, make sure that I've got my SimSolid selected here. Come to structure. I've put just some constraints on this end, a load on this end. We'll click Analyze and run it. And you can see with this one, it's taking a little bit, and it's telling me overlapping parts found. I knew that was there, but had I not known, this would let me know. And I could go through and I could review them, but I don't actually have to worry about them. The geometry-based solver SimSolid can handle that. And in fact, it gives me the option to continue. I click continue, and it's going to just go ahead and run that analysis. Now, this one will take a little bit longer. It looks like we're about, 10, 11 seconds into it. So this one may take a little bit longer. There's a lot of parts here and a lot of overlapping parts it's going to have to deal with. But in a matter of a few more seconds, it's going to give me results, and I can take a look at those. So we'll catch this when it's done, and I'll give you an exact time or amount of time it took the analysis when it's done. So it's completed. Let's take a look at those results here. And we can see that it's behaving obviously exaggerated deformation here, but we can see it's behaving exactly as we expected. Take a look at the von Mises stress, and we can see, in fact, let's reduce this a little bit just so we can see some of the high stress. Well, that's probably a little bit too much, but we are seeing stress in the model. We are seeing deformation exactly as we would expect. So, give the SimSolid solver a try in the cases where you've got large assemblies, many part assemblies, where you've got thin solids as we've talked about here, where you have very small features on your model, where you have markings, stampings, embossments that you don't want to take out. Or in the case where you've got parts that, like this, have poor geometry creation. Any of these instances, you're going to see incredible reductions in your analysis time, 50, 60, 70, 80, or in the case of the CubeSat, even up to 90+% reduction in analysis time. So with all this going for SimSolid, why would we choose OptiStruct at all? Um, Two words for you: topological optimization, or generative design, whatever you want to call it. OptiStruct is best in class topological optimization, lightweighting. Other reasons as well, but that's for another video. So take a look for another video, and we'll cover why you would choose OptiStruct over SimSolid in that case. Pop on over to our Academic Inspire Hub, where you can download the software, where you can get training resources, learn Inspire, get certified in Inspire, and give it a try on your models now. I'll put a QR code here that you can scan, and it will take you right on over to the Inspire Academic Hub. Thanks for watching.